Under the soft glow of a Hollywood premiere, where the world believes in happily ever after endings, there once stood a couple whose love seemed to defy every challenge fame could create. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were a portrait of elegance and devotion, hand in hand, moving through life as though nothing could weaken what they had found in each other. To millions, they were a reminder that love can survive the brightest spotlight. But even the brightest lights cast shadows, and some shadows remain unseen until the applause fades. For 19 years, their marriage was admired as one of Hollywood's strongest. They appeared on red carpets with effortless warmth. They raised a family away from chaos. They cultivated careers that only soared higher. But behind these shining moments existed a side of the world never seen. A silent battle Nicole shielded from the spotlight. A burden she carried with the kind of grace that made people believe everything was perfect when Reuters confirmed their separation in late 2025. The news stunned fans not because a glamorous couple had split, but because it was impossible to imagine that what appeared so strong could break so quietly. There were no loud accusations or public unraveling, only a calm announcement, almost whispering that something deeply personal had finally reached its end. But stories never truly begin at the end. To understand the weight of this moment, we must return to where it all started. A night in 2005, when two lives changed before the world ever noticed. Los Angeles, a charity event called Good Day LA. Nicole Kidman stood among familiar faces, a megastar whose poise could fill any room. Keith Urban was there too, a rising country musician with a charm that was warm rather than loud. When their eyes met for the first time, the cameras didn't catch it. No headlines followed. It was simply two people recognizing a kindred loneliness, the kind that hides behind success. Nicole later described the moment as immediate. She didn't need time to decide whether he mattered. She felt it. A year later, in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney, she walked toward a future she believed would be steady, loving, and shared. The world watched their wedding photos with awe. The glamorous actress and the soulful musician, living proof that fate could be kind. As their love story unfolded publicly, fans embraced the narrative. Nicole, graceful and tender. Keith, protective and full of heart. They looked invincible. Their shared laughter, quiet gestures, and the way they leaned into each other became the definition of romantic hope. But love, especially in the public eye, is rarely simple. 4 months after the wedding, reality delivered its first hard truth. Keith Urban entered a rehabilitation center, confronting an addiction he had carried long before he met Nicole. It wasn't a tabloid scandal. It was a real, painful struggle. Nicole didn't back away. She didn't let shame dictate their story. Instead, she intervened. She stood at his side through treatment and recovery, fighting a battle many newlyweds never imagined facing. Keith would later tell the world she saved his life. He spoke openly about the darkness he was emerging from and how close he came to losing everything before he even had the chance to build it. Nicole protected him fiercely. She stepped out of the spotlight, turned down opportunities, and kept their private life sealed away from public judgment. She chose love not as romance, but as responsibility. Their marriage survived that early fracture, but deep beneath the surface, cracks remained. Addiction does not disappear simply because someone wants to heal. Recovery can be a lifetime journey, and with every step forward, fear lingers in the shadows. Fear of the past, fear of failure, fear of becoming a burden. Keith navigated these fears while continuing to build a spectacular music career, one that demanded constant travel, unpredictable nights, and distance from home. Nicole balanced motherhood and her own career, which had never slowed. Her performances captured awards and critical praise. Yet behind every role was a woman holding her family together with quiet resilience. She never dramatized her challenges. She never invited pity. She simply kept going. But silence can be heavy. In public, she wore her famous calm smile, an expression so gentle it convinced the world everything was fine. In private, she carried exhaustion that no camera could detect. Friends described her as loving, supportive, but always composed, as though letting down her guard would make the world realize just how much she was holding together. Years passed. Their home is filled with love, but also long stretches of absence. Their schedules often pulled them toward different continents. The warmth was still there, just quieter. Moments of connection became more fleeting. Time apart became more normal than time together. Fans noticed fewer red carpet appearances as a couple, fewer interviews where they sat side by side. Whispers grew, soft at first, then louder. But Nicole never responded to them. Her silence was never avoidance. It was loyalty. It was dignity. It was the last defense she had against a world eager to speculate. Behind closed doors, conversations grew shorter. Misunderstandings lingered longer, and even though love remained, something vital was slipping away. Closeness. They were still married, still supportive, but living in separate emotional worlds. Then the moment everyone hoped would never arrive quietly surfaced. A private decision made with care, respect, and sorrow became public through a simple message. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were separating, mutual, respectful, and irreconcilable. There were no accusations, no blame, just the soft acknowledgement that something once beautiful had reached a point where holding on would only cause more pain. For Nicole, the decision was not a failure. It was acceptance. Acceptance that love can change, and that protecting someone can eventually mean letting go. Acceptance that strength sometimes means choosing peace over endurance. When she finally spoke about love in a post-separation interview, she never mentioned Keith directly. She didn't need to. Her words were reflective, honest, and deeply human. A quiet acknowledgement of years spent fighting for something she now had to release. She spoke of transformation, of wounds that heal quietly, of how love doesn't always end. Sometimes it becomes something different, something softer, something private. Nicole stopped performing strength and began living it. Her story is not defined by heartbreak. It is defined by resilience, the kind only visible when everything else falls away. She protected Keith when he needed protection. She protected her children when they needed stability. And in the end, she protected herself. Even as Hollywood watches and analyzes, she remains poised, choosing grace instead of noise. Because for nearly 2 decades, Nicole Kidman's greatest secret was not scandal. It was sacrifice, a sacrifice few knew she was making, a burden she carried silently until the moment she no longer had to. Yet, through every moment of silence, there is one presence that never left. Nicole Kidman. Her name, her image, her legacy, all of it remains intertwined with Keith's journey, not as a source of conflict, but as the anchor that pulled him toward stability when his world could have easily fallen apart. Together, they built a life far away from the chaos they once knew, a family shielded from the spotlight, a home that feels more like peace than fame. Nicole, who once battled her own share of public scrutiny, understands better than anyone that love isn't measured in headlines or applause. For Keith Urban, music became the bridge, bringing him back to the person he wanted to be, not the person the world tried to define. And the world watched as his concerts evolved into something different. Not a display of stardom, but a testimony of renewal. Every guitar chord sounds like a second chance. Every lyric carries the weight of survival. Every cheer echoes gratitude. Still, the audience wonders, when a love story looks this strong, how close did it come to breaking? The truth is simpler than speculation. Keith Urban never turned his back on his marriage. He never stepped into the scandals that tried to haunt him. He stood his ground, focused on the life he built, and chose to honor the love that rebuilt him. But fame, even when embraced with grace, never truly slows down. He continues to tour. He continues to shine. He continues to stand beneath the lights that once nearly consumed him. Yet now he understands them. They are not a measure of perfection. They are a reminder of the journey. A journey from the shadows of addiction to the strength of recovery. A journey from heartbreak to a love that refuses to shatter. A journey from misunderstood artist to global icon. When Keith steps onto the stage today, there is something different in his presence. He doesn't chase the audience. The audience comes to him, not for a spectacle, but for sincerity. His voice tells stories of mistakes and redemption, not secrets and scandals. His life is a tribute to resilience. Still, in quiet moments backstage, he sometimes pauses. He closes his eyes. He breathes. He remembers who he used to be, and he thanks the world for letting him evolve. He thanks the woman who stood by him, even when the world questioned everything. Nicole Kidman. Not a rumor, not a headline. A partner, a friend, a hand that never let go. Their story isn't one of betrayal, but of survival. The kind of love that isn't always picture-perfect, but is strong enough to withstand the weight of fame. Even as cameras flash, even as voices whisper, even as speculation rises, they keep walking forward, hand in hand. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that never become scandals.